Canada stands at a critical juncture with the introduction of Bill C-58, legislation that bans replacement workers in the event of a strike or lockout. Economic stability and the services Canadians rely on every day could be in jeopardy if the Senate chooses to approve the legislation without considerable consultation. FETCO President and CEO Derrick Hynes on what's at stake.
We know that these companies stitch the economy together. We know, and we certainly learned this during COVID, that our supply chains are delicate. So when you start removing pieces of the supply chain, you feel immediate impacts.
Hynes says the legislation overlooks the essential role of a small number of targeted and temporary replacement workers who maintain critical infrastructure and services during a labor dispute. He says even a handful of workers on strike can dismantle an entire telecommunications or transportation network. Small bargaining units have extraordinary power to disrupt a supply chain.
If an airline shuts down, what happens? Well, flights get canceled. That means not just business people going to meetings, but Canadians going on vacation. Courier companies, if we don't have full access, all of those packages that we've grown accustomed to ordering online and receiving don't get delivered. Telecom firms, if we have a strike at a major telecom firm and technicians cannot support the infrastructure, then home internet potentially shuts down. Banking services, which rely on that fiber optic network, are disrupted. Railways, if we see a railway strike, railways haul commodities on a massive scale on a daily basis, commodities that are critical to Canadians, like home heating fuel. You strike a railway, then that sort of product doesn't get delivered. These are real impacts on Canadians that will be felt immediately.
This is not a new issue, but it has never been so political.
Here's the history. In the past 15 years or so, similar bills have come up about a dozen times. They've always been voted down. Liberals and Conservatives, who generally carry the weight of Parliament, have always voted this sort of legislation away. We've seen twice in the past 5 years. There's about 150 current MPs who have voted no to similar bills. They do that because they know how destructive such a bill will be.
Hynes says this legislation is being rushed through because it is a deal the Liberals made with the NDP in order to stay in power. He calls it pure partisanship and no way to write sensible labor policy.
For decades and decades, in the federal private sector, as distinct from the provincial space, we have had a formal tripartite approach to developing labor policy, workplace policy. That means governments, unions, employers get in a room and discuss all range of issues around developing this sort of policy. Now, we don't always all get what we all want. That's not what a negotiation is. But on the whole, it works. The parties come together, we discuss issues, we hash out our differences, and what results is better policy. This is not that. C-58 is not that. This is a mandate that arrived from the government before any discussion occurred.
Fair and equitable negotiations are important to federally regulated employers in transportation and communications. Hynes says these employers would always rather reach a deal before turning to replacement workers. FETCO recognizes the spirit of collective bargaining and says it is achievable, as it always has been.
The current system is already balanced. We know that 96% of all collective bargaining in the federal private sector ends without a strike. The system is working. Banning replacement workers is a solution looking for a problem to solve.